Single mom's heartwarming blind date with CEO takes unexpected turn. His touching response. We'll see. Emily took a deep breath as she stood before her mirror, smoothing the fabric of her favorite dress over her curves. It had been years since she wore it, a splash of vibrant red that matched the fire she felt deep within despite the exhaustion that draped over her shoulders like a heavy blanket. She caught a glimpse of her reflection. The tired lines under her eyes told stories of countless late nights spent waiting tables, juggling the demands of her rambunctious kids, and practicing resilience as a single mom. As she twirled nervously, a flutter of dread and hope twisted in her stomach. A blind date, set up by her best friends, felt like stepping into a realm of pastel-colored lives that she didn't belong to. When she walked into the local diner, she felt the eyes of patrons brush against her skin. And then she saw him, Chris. He was impeccably dressed, a stone-faced CEO with a polished smile that hinted at privilege. For a moment, she felt like a deer in headlights, mingling mismatched threads of their worlds, her hustle for survival and his strategic boardroom deliberations. They sat across from each other as the murmur of the diner enveloped them, her heart racing not from excitement but from a profound sense of disconnect. "Tell me about yourself," he prompted, his tone light, eyes searching for a spark. Emily forced a smile, sharing snippets of her life, the endless bills and school projects, the moments where laughter mingled with tears. He listened, and in return, offered snippets about corporate buildings that towered over sidewalks and board meetings that crossed time zones. They exchanged nervous laughter, but an unspoken question loomed: could this man with his wealth ever fathom her daily grind? Just as she found a rhythm, a sudden ring shattered the moment. It was the school her son had been hurt in a playground accident. Panic surged through Emily, her heart raced like a hammer against her ribs, her mind spiraling into a dark whirlpool of dread. Chris's brow furrowed. "Let us go. I'll drive you." Time slipped away as they hurried outside, and he insisted on taking the wheel. They flew through suburban streets, sirens of the night whispering past them. In the chaos of the car, they laughed and shared deeper truths: his struggles, stifled by his riches, and her tenacity shaped by love and hardship. Like a flip of a switch, tension turned to connection, the boundaries of their lives slowly waving away. But reality loomed over them. As they entered the hospital, sterile walls echoed with a fresh wave of anxiety. Chris caught a glimpse of her unease as waiting room chairs filled with whispers and concerned parents. But, societal prejudices felt like a cold shadow, and doubts started to creep in. Could he really understand the sacrifices she made for her children? Before they could step further into shared vulnerabilities, a familiar face emerged from the crowd, complicating the fragile bond they had forged. Emily's heart sank, realizing that sometimes love could be as tangled as it was hopeful. In that hospital relentlessly tethered to uncertainty, their paths hung in precarious balance, and the dawning realization remained creeping: could they navigate the complexities of their worlds, or would fear distance them forever? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As dawn approached, Emily's heart weighed heavy. She wanted more: a connection, a chance, yet the protective instinct for her kids warred with the desire for love. With uncertainty written across her features, she faced a decision that echoed through the chambers of her life. Could this unexpected moment burst open the world she had always held tightly? Or would the fears of a mother's heart pull her back into the shadows of safety? The throbbing question lingered between them, both caught in the unpredictability of tomorrow. Emily's heart raced as she stood frozen in the hospital's waiting room, straining to catch a glimpse of her son through the frosted glass doors. Chris stood beside her, his tall frame a mix of confidence and uncertainty, his typical CEO demeanor softening as he sensed her turmoil. She could feel the heat of anxiety radiating from her, a tight knot of fear twisting in her stomach. "Is he okay?" Chris asked softly, trying to bridge the silence. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Emily turned to him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I don't know. I can't lose him. He's everything." Her words tumbled out, raw and vulnerable, exposing the depth of her fears. Concealed behind her brave exterior, her mother's heart bellowed with the weight of every sleepless night and every scraped knee she had ever bandaged. He nodded, understanding. "I get it. My mother was everything to me too. It's tough." There was a moment, fleeting yet potent, where their shared experiences connected them across differing worlds. Then, as if the universe decided to play its cruel hand, her ex-husband appeared, striding across the fluorescent-lit space. His presence sliced through their fragile moment like a bolt of lightning. Emily's breath hitched in her throat, a flood of emotions battling within her. Anger and sadness fought side by side, while the stabs of resentment were draped in years of shared history. "Nice to see you, Emily," he said, feigning casualness that felt like a betrayal. She could see it in his eyes, the same dismissive aloofness that had haunted their marriage, the same disregard that had made her nights long and lonely. "What are you doing here?" Emily's voice wavered, but she held her ground. She didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing her rattle. "I came to check on Jacob." He cleared his throat, his tone shifting. "I heard he got hurt." "Like you actually care," she spat, bitterness spilling from her lips. Chris shifted subtly closer, a protective energy emanating from him that was new but felt strangely comforting in this mess. As her ex launched into a lecture about parenting and responsibilities, Emily felt Chris's presence solidify beside her, a solid rock against turbulent waters. Relief washed over her. He stood there, quietly supportive, radiating strength despite the chaos around them. It dawned on her, was this the kind of partnership she had been too afraid to dream about? "Emily," Chris interrupted gently, breaking the tension. "You don't have to do this alone." The sincerity in his eyes held an unspoken promise, a gleam of hope in the darkness. In that moment, she felt the walls she'd carefully built around her heart begin to chip away. Before she could respond, the doctor emerged from the back, his expression serious yet calm. "Emily Martinez. We need to discuss your son's condition." Emily felt the world tilt, her heart plummeting as Chris squeezed her hand gently. "I'm here," he whispered. His warm support enveloped her like a safety net, grounding her amidst the spiral of fears that threatened to take hold. Taking a deep breath, she nodded at the doctor, ready to face whatever news awaited her, but as they moved closer to the doctor, another thundering question lingered in her mind: could she truly open herself up to Chris? Or would shadows from her past always intertwine with her present? The path ahead was blurry, but one thing was clear: her life was on the verge of transforming, and she needed to decide if she would take the leap. What awaited her on the other side was uncertain, amplifying the stakes of this fragile moment. Would she find the courage to embrace this connection, or would fear pull her back into the shadows? Emily stepped toward the doctor, her heart thudding hard against her chest. She could feel Chris beside her, a soft warmth that both calmed and complicated her emotions. He had become her unexpected anchor in this storm, but she couldn't shake the confusion that swirled in her mind. "Emily," the doctor said again, drawing her attention. "I understand you're anxious. Jacob sustained a head injury. We need to keep him for observations, but I assure you, his vital signs are stable." A rush of relief washed over her, yet it was tinged with lingering worry. "What exactly are you saying?" she managed, her voice trembling slightly. "He needs rest, and we want to monitor him closely for the next 24 hours. It's protocol, but I really believe he'll be all right," the doctor explained, his tone steady. "Would you like to see him now?" "Yes, please," she replied, her words hitching on her breath. Chris squeezed her hand, and she looked up to see his expression filled with genuine concern. "You're doing great," he said quietly, offering her the gentle reassurance she desperately needed. With a nod from the doctor, they were led down a sterile hallway. The smell of antiseptic hung in the air, mingling with her emotions like a bitter cocktail. She could hear machines beeping softly, each sound amplifying the silence between her and Chris. As they approached Jacob's room, a whirlwind of memories flooded Emily's mind. His first steps, his wide-eyed wonder when he saw the stars for the first time, and the silly monster socks she had bought him last Christmas. Each recollection warmed her heart but also tightened the knot of fear in her stomach. Opening the door, Emily stepped inside, her breath catching as she took in the sight of her son resting on the hospital bed. Jacob's head was bandaged, and even though he looked small and vulnerable, he was still her brave little warrior. The sight of him brought tears to her eyes, and a lump formed in her throat. "Mom!" Jacob croaked, blinking awake. His voice was soft, and her heart twisted painfully at his discomfort. "I'm right here, sweetheart," she whispered, rushing to his side. She stroked his hair gently, wishing she could take away his pain. "You're going to be okay. The doctor said they'll take good care of you." As she spoke, Chris moved to stand beside her, quietly observing the exchange. Emily caught his eye, and a flicker of something deeper passed between them, a bond forming amidst the chaos that filled the room. "Who is that?" Jacob asked, his gaze shifting to Chris with an innocent curiosity. "This is Chris," she said, feeling the warmth of her cheeks. He's a friend." The truth felt bittersweet on her tongue. "A friend?" Jacob echoed, a hint of skepticism in his eyes. Emily flashed Chris a reassuring smile that felt like a vow and an invitation. "He's been really helpful today." Chris stepped forward, kneeling beside the bed. "Hey there, buddy. You've got a lot of people worried about you. I'm glad to see you're awake." His easy smile brought a flicker of light into the otherwise sterile room. Jacob squinted at Chris but then shifted under the covers, a small shy smile breaking through his fatigue. "Are you a superhero?" Emily smirked, her heart warming at the innocence of the question. Chris chuckled, the sound light and unexpectedly charming. "I'm not a superhero, but I like to think we all have a little superhero in us, especially when we're being brave." The exchange sparked something in Emily, a realization dawning on her. Yes, it was complicated. Yes, life had thrown her curveballs she never expected. But in this moment, with Chris and Jacob, the possibilities began to shimmer like freshly fallen snow under a brilliant sun. As Jacob yawned, fighting off sleep, Emily felt a shift within herself. Maybe opening up wouldn't be so terrifying. Maybe it was okay to lean on someone else for once. But just as the warmth wrapped around her heart like a blanket, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The name on the screen sent icy fingers of tension creeping back up her spine. It was her ex, and in an instant, every worry she had rippled back to the surface. What could he possibly want now? "Everything okay?" Chris asked, sensing the change in her demeanor. She began, but the shadow of her past loomed large, the tightrope of her present and future beginning to wobble. As she stared at the screen, her heart raced. Would this be a chance to finally break free, or would it tie her to the fears that had held her captive for so long? She mustered her breath, contemplating the call that seemed to define her next move. Time felt suspended as she chose what to do next. Would she confront the fear or let it dictate her choices? Emily hesitated, her fingers trembling over the screen. The name flickered back at her like a warning sign, one she wished she could ignore. She felt Chris's gaze on her, steady and encouraging, like a lighthouse in a storm. "Emily?" he prompted gently. "I should answer it." The words felt heavy, dragging her down as she spoke them. How could she let a past that haunted her ruin this moment, this fragile hope that was beginning to blossom? With a deep breath, she swiped to answer, bracing herself for whatever came next. "Hello." Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. Emily, her ex's voice was smooth but strained. "I wanted to check in on Jacob. I heard about the accident." The air in her lungs tightened. A swell of anger mixed with disbelief bubbled up inside her. "You heard?" she snapped, clenching her jaw. "You haven't been around in months. Why now?" There was a pause on the other end, and she saw Chris's concern sharpen. The corners of his mouth pulled tightly, a silent support as he resisted the urge to intervene. "Look, I don't want to argue," her ex continued, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. I want to be involved. Can I come down?" She bit her lip, her mind racing. This was the last thing Jacob needed, a confrontation between parents who couldn't stand the sight of each other. She glanced at Jacob, still curling up on the bed, fatigue written all over his gentle features. "Stay away," she muttered through gritted teeth. "I don't want you to upset him." His voice hardened. "This is my son too, Emily. You can't keep me out of his life." The tension from the argument seeped through the phone, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She swallowed hard, fighting the anger rising within her. "You weren't there when he needed you. You don't get to just waltz back in because it's convenient for you." The words were fierce, but they masked the fear that drummed in her heart. "I'm coming down. You can't stop me," he insisted, a finality in his tone that made her stomach churn. "Fine," she snapped back, the word bitter in her mouth. "Just stay away from the room." As she ended the call, tears pricked at her eyes. She felt trapped in a cycle that felt all too familiar. He had a way of pulling her back into chaos. But as she turned to look at Chris, she was surprised to find his expression softened, as if he understood far deeper than the words exchanged. "Emily," he started, his voice low and calm. "You don't have to go through this alone." She shook her head, trying to dismiss the warmth of his support. "I'm used to it. I can handle things myself." "But you shouldn't have to," Chris replied, taking a half-step closer, a gesture both inviting and protective. The weight of his words settled around her. He was right. Why must she always brave the storms alone? In that moment, she glimpsed a crossroads. Two paths diverged under the stark fluorescent lights of the hospital room. One led back to the turmoil of her past, and the other offered something unfamiliar yet sweet, a chance at genuine support, perhaps even more. "Mom." Jacob's weak voice interrupted, pulling her thoughts back into focus. He squinted at her, concern etched on his little face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart," she lied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little hiccup." Jacob's gaze moved back to Chris, searching. "Is he a superhero?" Emily chuckled through the tension, feeling warmth pooling in her heart. "Maybe a sidekick today." Chris smiled softly, the kindness in his eyes a balm to her frayed nerves. "Only if you promise to be brave today too." The moment felt eternal, stretched thin against the backdrop of uncertainty. But as she looked at both the boys, her son and the man who offered her a glimpse of connection, echoes of possibility whispered through the silence. Just then, Emily's phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another name that instantly sent dread rolling through her. Her heart raced anew. Who else would come crashing into her life uninvited? She took a breath, her next decision hanging on the edge of a knife. What awaited her this time? Emily's heart raced as she glanced down at the screen. The name made her stomach drop. It was her sister, Jill. They hadn't spoken in weeks, not since the fallout over Jacob's father's absence. With Jacob in the hospital, she felt a strange mix of vulnerability and stubbornness. Would Jill's voice add to her stress or somehow bring relief? The phone buzzed again, snapping her from her thoughts. Chris cleared his throat softly, breaking the silence that threatened to swallow her whole. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." She met his gaze again, those calm, understanding eyes giving her the slightest nudge. Taking a breath, she pressed the screen to answer. "Hey, Jill," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her nerves. "Emily. I just heard about the accident. Is Jacob okay?" Jill's concern was immediate, genuine. "He's stable. Just tired," Emily replied, unconsciously holding her breath as she felt Chris's reassuring presence beside her. "But you can't do this alone." "I'm coming over," Jill interrupted. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a battle cry. Emily frowned, her stomach twisting. No, it's okay. I have stop. You know you need me, Jill insisted, and Emily could almost see her sister's fierce determination through the phone. It was like a storm pulling at both their histories, their shared disappointments and triumphs. Before she could respond, Jacob stirred slightly in his bed, adjusting his position, caught between sleep and wakefulness. Mom. Everything's fine, buddy, she soothed, glancing over to find him blinking through the haze of medication. She leaned down close to his ear. Just a little chat. Jill's voice came through the phone again, louder now. Emily, I can be there in an hour. Please. We need to talk about everything. Emily hesitated, torn. After everything that happened, it felt risky to allow her sister back into her life without question. But she also didn't want to shut her out completely. She wanted to lean on the support, but there was a real part of her afraid of what that might cost. I'll be there, Jill commanded, her tone leaving little room for argument. And I'm bringing food. Jacob will need to eat. The mention of food tethered Emily momentarily to the present. She glanced at Jacob, who had drifted back to sleep. Fine, she said softly. Just don't overwhelm him. I want tea. Just be ready to talk, Jill replied before disconnecting. Emily swiped the screen off, her mind a jumble of worries and thoughts. Chris watched her with concern, the silence wrapping around them both like a thick fog. We'll manage, he said gently. Whatever happens, you won't have to face it alone. She nodded, feeling the warmth of his words soothing her frayed nerves. But uncertainty weighed on her. How could she balance the arrival of her sister, the shadow of Jacob's father returning, and hope for healing? A knock sliced through the quiet, and her heart dropped again. Chris moved to the door instinctively, but Emily's body tensed immediately. Wait. What if it's him? Chris asked, his demeanor shifting to protective mode. I can't, she whispered, panic swirling. He can't. I need just one moment of peace. Chris placed a hand on the door, pausing. Then I'm right here. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Emily felt a flicker of hope in his words, but before she could breathe it in, the door creaked open. A figure appeared, momentarily silhouetted in the hallway lights. That it was Jill. Despite the turmoil swirling around her, a rush of conflicting emotions washed over Emily as she faced the woman who was once her closest ally, now a symbol of past discord. Hey, Jill said, stepping inside. You look well. Thanks for that, Emily replied dryly, but small amusement flickered through her. Then there was Chris, standing at her side, the challenge in his expression unmistakable. He seemed like a solid fortress, ready to defend her from whatever storm was brewing beyond their fragile family bubble. The air thickened with unspoken words, decision points, and the promise of change. Emily felt her heart beat heavier as she realized that the coming moments were about to reshape everything. What else was waiting to surface? Let us start over, Jill said, her voice softer now, attempting to bridge the distance that had widened between them over the months. She stepped closer, her arms crossed, an uneasy but hopeful expression on her face. Emily swallowed hard, struggling to know the right words. You really don't have to be here. I've got Chris, she said, her gaze darting to him. He remained quiet but attentive, a steady light amidst the confusion. I know, Jill replied, shaking her head. But this is about Jacob, not just us. He needs us both. The mention of Jacob sent an anxious flutter through Emily's stomach. She squashed her feelings with a firm nod, as if that would affirm her resolve. You're right, but it's complicated. Jill took another step forward, her hands dropped to her sides. Complicated? That's an understatement. We both know there's so much that we need to untangle, and you shouldn't have to handle it all alone. Like you did? Emily challenged, a mixture of hurt and anger bubbling up. You left me when I needed you most. I was drowning. Jill's features softened, shadowed with regret. I didn't know how to cope, Em. I thought staying away would help. Help who? You or me? Silence hung between them, heavy and layered with tension. Chris shifted slightly, the unease palpable. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a reckoning unfolding in front of him. Can we just focus on Jacob? Chris interjected, his voice calm but urgent. He's the one who needs our attention right now. The rest can wait. Emily appreciated the distraction, but the anger still lingered inside. Fine, she sighed, leaning against the wall as Jacob stirred again in his sleep, a soft whimper escaping him. Jill's eyes darted toward the bed, immediately concerned. How is he really doing? Boring, Jacob mumbled, his voice raspy but clear. And I'm hungry. See? Emily chuckled nervously, the tension dissipating just a bit. I told you he wouldn't eat hospital food. Jill laughed, a genuine sound that's been missing from their dynamic for so long. That kid has opinions, huh? He gets that from me, Emily replied, earning a playful eye roll from Jacob. Chris watched the exchange quietly, the warmth in the room slowly thawing the ice that had built between the sisters. Maybe there was a flicker of hope after all. As Emily turned her body to look at both of them, she felt the weight of the past lifting, if only slightly. If you're really going to be here, we need to set some ground rules. I need you to be supportive, not judgmental. I wouldn't dream of it, Jill said, the sincerity in her voice clear. Starting now, we're a team. A sudden solemn moment stretched out between them again as reality crept back in. Emily looked at Jacob, the reminder of her responsibilities grounding her fears. You know, his dad will probably be in touch soon. You'll have to be ready for that too, she said. It was a simple truth that felt like a ticking clock in the room. Jill's expression turned serious. Then we'll face him too. Together. After how we used to handle things, I think it's time we stand united. Emily hesitated but couldn't ignore the flutter of hope. Could they really join forces against all that life was throwing at them? Okay, she finally said, daring to believe. Let us see how it goes. Just then, the door opened again, and a nurse stepped in, checking the chart at the foot of Jacob's bed. Good news, Jacob. Your doctor says you're doing well. Shorter wait for your favorite meal. As they all shared a breath of relief, Emily's heart thudded with anticipation. Maybe just maybe, this storm was leading to a clearer sky, but the thought of Jacob's father loomed in the background, a potential reunion that could twist everything again. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that some storms never truly pass. What if the past was ready to re-enter their lives, demanding another conversation they weren't prepared to have yet? As the nurse left, Jill stepped further into the room, glancing back at Chris with a hint of uncertainty. I really didn't think today would be so intense, she confessed, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. But I meant it when I said we're a team now. Yeah, Emily replied, her heart still racing from the weight of their earlier exchange. But I'll hold you to that. Jacob, now fully awake, squinted up at them, his expression a mix of confusion and curiosity. What did I miss? Oh, just some sisterly bonding, Jill said, her tone light to reassure him. They're just working on becoming best friends again. Emily shot Jill a glare before snatching up one of Jacob's stuffed animals from the bedside. Trust me, it's a work in progress. Their playful banter filled the previously heavy air, offering a momentary escape. It felt good, almost like the times when they were kids, before life threw its curveballs. For the first time in a long while, Emily looked at her sister and saw not just a co-parent but a partner she might be able to rely on, but that security was as fragile as a soap bubble. The reminder of Jacob's father loomed like a dark cloud on their horizon. She was right to worry about what kind of storm he could bring. Okay, sport, Chris said after a moment, delivering a soft punch to Jacob's shoulder. What do you want to eat when they bring your meal? We can plan an epic feast right here. Yeah. Pizza. With pepperoni. Jacob's eyes sparkled, the earlier stress forgotten. Pizza it is, Chris grinned, glancing at Emily and Jill, who both seemed relieved to see Jacob so animated. The warmth that filled the room was infectious, and Emily found herself feeling lighter, but just as that warmth started to spread, the door swung open again. This time it was a man in a crisp white coat who entered, carrying a clipboard. He looked in his late 40s, with kind eyes, and he spoke with authority tempered by compassion. "Hi there, Jacob. My name is Dr. Hartman. I have some good news." The room froze. Emily's breath caught in her throat. He wasn't just their doctor, he was the harbinger of hope. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You're recovering well. I'm optimistic you'll be able to go home soon, provided you continue to eat and regain your strength. We're looking at a release by the weekend if everything holds steady." A wave of relief washed over Emily. She glanced at Jill. "Did you hear that?" Jacob's face lit up, and he barely contained his excitement. "Does that mean I can have pizza at home?" "It sure does." Dr. Hartman smiled and stood there a moment longer before continuing. "That said, I do want to discuss a discharge plan, especially about follow-ups and support. It's crucial that we keep monitoring your progress, Jacob. I want to make sure you're comfortable and secure once you leave." "Of course," Emily replied, her heart doing a little dance. But another wave of anxiety washed over her. They would need to talk about Jacob's father before he came home. As Dr. Hartman detailed the plans, Emily's mind drifted back to their turbulent past, and it felt like every conceivable worry crept back into her heart. How could she ensure Jacob wouldn't be swept into something traumatic again? Uneasy thoughts were interrupted when Jacob interrupted. "What about my dad? He said he would come and see me." The room fell silent. The air turned thick with unspoken fears. Emily's skin prickled, and she shot a glance at Jill. Her heart seemed to stop. Jill's face was equally uneasy. "We'll handle it, Jacob. You only focus on getting better." "Yeah," Emily added, forcing a smile. "You're going to be stronger than ever, and we'll be right here with you." A moment passed, an unshakable silence that hinted at decisions yet to come. But the truth loomed, and as Jacob's father's name hung heavy in the air, Emily worried, would their newfound partnership be strong enough to face this together? The door opened again, and she felt her heart sink. Would this be the beginning of a new chapter, or a reminder of the chaos that had once consumed their lives? Emily's gut nodded as she braced herself for who might walk through the door. But her heart sank deeper when she recognized the figure emerging into the room. It wasn't the light at the end of the tunnel, it was more like stepping into a dark alley. "Hello, Jacob," the man said, his voice smooth yet betraying an unsettling edge. His presence filled the small room, and time felt like it had stopped. "Dad!" Jacob's voice echoed in delight, a mixture of innocence and ignorant bliss. But Emily saw the tension thicken instantly between the adults. John, Jacob's father, had been distant for too long, and seeing him now rekindled a smoldering apprehension in her chest. "Hey, buddy," John replied, a half-smile revealing too many emotions to decipher. "How are you feeling?" "I feel better. I can go home soon. We're gonna have pizza," Jacob exclaimed, oblivious to the charged atmosphere. "That's great." John stepped closer, kneeling down to Jacob's level. It made Emily's skin crawl to see such familiarity, especially when not so long ago, John had been a chaotic storm in their lives. "Emily," John acknowledged her with a nod, but the weight of the past hung heavy in the air. "John," she responded, her tone clipped. Chris, sensing the mounting tension, cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Why don't we give Jacob and his dad a moment to chat?" "Sure," Emily said, though her instincts screamed otherwise. Yet, she knew they needed to address this now or later. Didn't matter, the confrontation would happen and it was better when they were prepared. As Chris and Jill quietly stepped outside, Emily turned to Jacob. "You are feeling okay, right?" Jacob nodded, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his green eyes, the very ones that reminded Emily of how fragile hope could be. You know we've been working on some important plans for you. Right? She added, trying to keep him focused. Yeah, I heard, Jacob replied, glancing at John. But Dad's here now. The way he said Dad struck a chord in Emily, mingling with a sense of possessiveness. She shifted her attention to John. We need to talk about his discharge plan. It's critical we maintain a stable environment when he goes home. John straightened, glancing between mother and son. I just want what's best for him, like you, he said. There was sincerity in his tone, but Emily couldn't ignore the threat that lay beneath. Having you here is complicated. Complicated? I'm his father, John replied defensively. Yes, but being a father isn't just about showing up, John. It's about being there for him, Emily shot back, her voice rising despite her attempts to remain calm. Jacob shifted uncomfortably in his bed, sensing the brewing storm. Can we just go home, please? Listen, Emily turned her gaze back to Jacob, the softness in her voice returning. I'll always fight for you. That'll never change. Emily, that's enough, John cut in sharply. The atmosphere was electric, and the tension filled every corner of the room. A silence fell. Jacob looked between the two, confusion etched on his face. It was a mix of heartache and fear that no child should ever carry. The weight of what was left unsaid was suffocating. Jacob, John began, softer this time. I want to be there for you. I need to be there for you. Emily's heart raced. She wanted to protect Jacob, to assure him, but John's words hung there like a heavy curtain. What if he meant it? Could people change? A door creaked open again, and Chris peeked his head back into the room. Everything okay? Emily met his eyes, her heart thudding. Nothing felt okay. But one thing was clear, this moment was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. As John looked at Jacob with a renewed intensity, Emily braced herself. The true battle for their family's peace was only just starting. Would Jacob's recovery bring them closer together, or would it unravel everything they had worked to build? The unspoken question hung heavily in the air, a promise of chaos on the horizon. Jacob shifted in his bed, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. He wasn't comfortable in the silence that stretched between Emily and John, it pressed against his small chest, making it harder to breathe. Can we talk about pizza? He ventured, trying to lighten the mood. Emily smiled at him, relief washing over her for a moment. Sure, buddy. What kind do you want? Pepperoni. Jacob's face brightened, but Emily could see the worry lurking beneath his excitement. It was her job to keep that worry at bay, to shield him from the complications of adult life. Just remember, we need to finish your homework first, she said lightly, though her heart wasn't in it. John's expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. I'll help him with homework, he said, a suggestion mingled with assertion. I can come around more often now. Emily took a deep breath, determination bubbling up inside her. No offense, John, but you being around often isn't what Jacob needs right now. He has to heal first, and that means stability. He doesn't need to worry about your plans. Plans? Jacob echoed, curious and confused. Just grown-up stuff, sweetie, Emily said quickly, hoping to protect him from the hurt she saw coming. Her voice softened. Let us focus on getting you out of here first, okay? John stood, fists clenched at his side. I don't want to fight this battle through my son. I'm here, I want to be involved. You can't shut me out. Emily felt a rush of heat in her cheeks. Involved? You think that showing up once is involvement? You've missed all the hard parts, John. You don't get to waltz back in like this is a game. Emily. Chris's voice cut through the tension, his tone calm but firm as he stepped back inside. Should we be discussing this here? John shot him an annoyed glare. Stay out of this, Chris. You don't know I know enough to see the strain this is putting on Jacob, Chris rebutted, his eyes sharp. He's already been through so much. The last thing he needs is to feel like he is in the middle of a war zone. Jacob's eyes widened, glistening with moisture. I just want pizza and to go home. His voice broke, the stress of the afternoon finally hitting him. Emily rushed to his side, taking his hand in hers. We will get home, Jacob. I promise. She squeezed his hand, wishing the warmth could wash away his fears. John softened, looking at his son as if he were seeing him for the first time instead of the embodiment of his past mistakes. I promise I'm going to be there for you if you'll let me. The words hung in the air, balanced between hope and doubt. Jacob looked between his parents, hungry for assurance in a battle of wills he couldn't fully understand. The room closed around them, the heaviness mounting. Jacob, what do you want? Emily asked, her voice thick with the weight of decision. Do you think you can handle having both of us here? Jacob looked at John and then back at Emily. The innocence in his eyes was telling, he simply craved security, a feeling of being whole again. I want you both to be happy. Emily's heart ached. How could she promise that to him? We'll try, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, each word weighed down with uncertainty. Then, like a spark in the dark, John added, we can work together for him. Emily's gaze met John's, and for an instant, there was a glimpse of possibility, a fragile thread binding them together for Jacob's sake, but the weight of doubt still loomed. Was it truly possible to mend what was broken? The path ahead felt unpredictable, and what had been laid out as hopeful plans now teetered on the edge of another fierce storm. As Jacob leaned back on his pillow, there was a flicker of determination in his eyes, as if he needed his parents to understand that he too was going to fight for what he wanted. Emily breathed, let us talk things through, for Jacob. John nodded slowly, the fight in him faltering, but the question remained. Could this fragile truce hold, or would it collapse under the pressure of their shared history? With the stakes rising, the air vibrated with tension. One wrong word might undo everything. What lay ahead felt like a leap into the unknown, one that would force them to confront not only their pasts but each other, and for Jacob's future, it was a risk they might have to take. As the silence loomed in the sterile hospital room, Emily realized something had shifted. Her heart, heavy with uncertainty, felt like it was lightly pulsing again, filled with a sense of agency she hadn't felt in a long time. The weight of the world hadn't lifted, but with Chris beside her, a flicker of hope began to illuminate the darkness. We need to make decisions as a family, she said, her voice steady, yet soft. Whatever that looks like. Jacob's eyes darted between both parents, confusion mingling with longing for normalcy. Emily reached for his hand again, holding it firmly but tenderly. What do you need from us, Jake? He took a shaky breath, his small fingers gripping hers tightly. I just want pizza and for us to smile again. Like when we used to. Tears pricked Emily's eyes, she hadn't realized how much they had all lost in the chaos of adulthood. We can start there, she said, trying to mask her emotions with a smile. And if we're going to have pizza, we can definitely bring it into the conversation. John leaned back, the earlier tension fading as he nodded. I want to support that. Let us make sure you're safe, kid. Then, pizza. Deal? Jacob nodded, a glimmer of excitement sparking in his eyes. Deal. Emily felt a warmth blossom in her chest, a connection weaving between the three of them. Chris stepped closer, ready to play his part in this fragile coalition. I'll get the pizza. What's your favorite? Pepperoni. Jacob shouted, his joy infectious. As laughter began to bubble up again, Emily felt her guard slowly start to lift. Chris glanced at her, sensing her shift. You okay? He asked softly. Yeah, she said, feeling a new kind of strength. I think we might actually be okay. Just then, a nurse entered, a bright smile on her face. Hey everyone. I hear we might have celebratory pizza in the works. They all nodded enthusiastically, and in that small moment, a lightness filled the room, pushing back the clouds of uncertainty. The nurse checked Jacob's chart, offering updates and assuring them that his recovery was smooth, the impending discharge looking bright. Emily could see the possibilities grow. Maybe they could all find a way to make this family work. Maybe the darkness wouldn't consume them after all, maybe they could breathe life back into their shattered pieces. As the nurse left, John turned to Emily. "We should work on making a schedule, to support Jacob. I can help with homework and be there for his games." Emily raised her brows, but instead of arguing, she felt a cautious spark of agreement. "If you can commit, then let us talk about it." John nodded, a flicker of understanding passing between them. They both let each other down, but for Jacob's sake, they had to learn to rise above it. The door opened once more, and Chris stepped inside with a large pizza box, its tempting aroma wafting through the room. "Pizza emergency," he declared, breaking the moment of serious conversation. Jacob's face lit up, and Emily couldn't help but smile at the sight of him. "Thank you," he exclaimed. As they shared slices and laughter, the walls that had previously confined them began to dissolve. Emily felt lighter as they all discussed their favorite toppings and memories tied with food that no longer felt weighted with heavy sounds of arguments or past betrayals. Later that evening, as Jacob's eyelids fluttered and he drifted into peaceful slumber after pizza, the atmosphere in the room settled into something familial. Jill peeked through the door, glancing between Emily and John with cautious optimism as she stepped inside. "Is it safe?" She joked lightly, but the question bore a deeper meaning. Emily exchanged glances with Chris, then John. "Yeah, I think it is," Emily said firmly. Jill smiled, relief washing over her. "Good. I brought dessert." As they all shifted together around the small hospital bed, Emily realized that this was only the beginning. There were still storms to face, but for the first time in ages, she could see a path unfolding. What had felt like a sharp divide between their fragmented lives now appeared to have the capacity for connection woven with the threads of shared experiences, laughter, and love. With a renewed spirit, Emily felt a resolute decision settle within her. They were going to navigate this journey, together. In that room, amidst laughter and tentative hope, Emily could finally let go of her fears, allowing the light of potential transformation to shine bright. She glanced over at Chris, grateful for his unwavering support. He had shown her strength, unafraid to step into the chaos but gently, with care. A smile spread across Emily's face as she held on to this moment, knowing they could face whatever lay ahead. Love had a funny way of weaving itself back together, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could finally start handing over the burden that had weighed her down for so long that it felt like freedom. It felt like home. Now, here's where I need your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that follow these heartwarming transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your love for this story. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this emotional ending, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey. This is the moment to show your support. Let us uplift each other.